My next Patreon question is from Joshua, who wanted me to compare two movies centered on famous musicians. Between the following two biopics about a music icon who was haunted by the accidental death of a sibling, had a distant father, experienced a career-threatening drug addiction, and made a successful career comeback, which is better, Ray or Walk the Line? Both of these were released a year apart, and while one centered on Ray Charles and the other on Johnny Cash, both were acclaimed and did very well at the Oscars. I think both are decently made portraits of their careers, although it's hard not to notice the similarities between the films as they check through their lives. I think they are both close in the quality scale, but I'm going to give the slight edge to Ray. The film does a good job of portraying his career and the influence of his musical style. There's also an emphasis on how he was impacted by his blindness as well as the prejudice of the era. His drug addiction plays an important role in the story too, as well as his adultery. Ray Charles did read the script in Braille before they started filming, and outside of a few scenes he objected to, it's good he was fine with the movie showing his flaws. Jamie Foxx's performance is a solid use of mimicry, and you can tell he worked hard to capture Charles' movements. I honestly think Kerry Washington is the standout of the movie, as his wife Della, as she shows why Della fell in love with Ray Charles, but also her frustrations and anger at his drug use. I also like the behind the scenes that goes on in the record companies. Something that holds the film back, though, is the Cliff Notes nature of the narrative. I will expand on this a little later when I talk about Walk the Line, but Ray followed the music biopic formula to a T. Yes, a lot of these events happened in his life, but the way everything is condensed into the film's 2.5 hours does dilute the massive impact that Ray Charles had. Taylor Hackford's direction is good, and the musical performances bring a lot to the table, as does Jamie Foxx. But it cannot escape the feeling of watching a Wikipedia article. Walk the Line is similar in that regard, although like Ray, it has plenty of things worth praising. Joaquin Phoenix does a really good job of playing Johnny Cash as he struggles with his desires and personal demons. Reese Witherspoon won an Oscar for playing his second wife, June Carter, and it's easy to see why, as the second she walks on screen, she brings an impressive level of energy and charm. However, she is great in the dramatic scenes too. Thanks to Witherspoon and the screenplay, Carter becomes an actual fleshed-out character, with her own arc, and not just someone who helped Johnny Cash overcome his drug problem. Walk the Line is probably at its best when Cash and Carter perform on stage, as James Mangold amps up the energy of those sequences with his direction. Like Ray, though, the movie cannot help but go through the music biopic story beats. They even do that familiar trope of having a character say a line, and then it inspires a famous song in the very next scene. I'm also a little confused at how we're supposed to view Cash's first wife, Vivian. Through a good chunk of the movie, she is depicted as frequently doubting her husband and not supporting him in his musical dreams. So I guess she is an antagonist, but by the end, I actually found her to be one of the more sympathetic characters. I admit something that affected my rewatches of Ray and Walk the Line is that last year I watched Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, for the first time. Walk Hard presents a satirical take on the musician biopic by accurately portraying all the familiar archetypes. While a commentary on the genre as a whole, the filmmakers mostly took inspiration from Ray and Walk the Line. So watching those two films afterwards, it's difficult not to be reminded of certain scenes from Walk Hard. Watching them again, it also made me wonder why biopics about musicians as varied as Ray Charles, Johnny Cash, Freddie Mercury, James Brown, and Elton John feel like they go through many of the same sequence of events. Sure, many of them did fall into drug addiction, and a few did suffer some tragedy in their childhood. But by making their story so similar and conventional, this also leads to really interesting parts of their life being cut. Did you know Johnny Cash was an advocate for Native American rights? Well, that's not even mentioned in Walk the Line. I thought Bohemian Rhapsody was a particular offender of this. It somehow took a band like Queen and made their story seem ordinary, when they were anything but. That's not even getting into the strange way the movie switched events around, mostly so they could end on Live Aid, and also invent a breakup that never happened. Bohemian Rhapsody even said a concert Queen performed in Rio de Janeiro took place 6 years before it actually happened. All biopics take a considerable amount of dramatic license, as translating someone's entire life story into a film pretty much requires it. I just find it unusual how so many musician biopics do follow a similar template. Anyway, I want to know your thoughts on these sorts of biopics, and also whether you prefer Walk the Line or Ray. Thank you for your question, Joshua.